started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
My name is Eric, and joining me for a day of insecurity and self-indulgence is none other than Michael Kester.
Yeah, dead on.
What are the movies today?
Today we're going to do American Beauty and Adaptation.
You know, I don't know that it's just the midlife crisis and the meta and there's also a lot of brief retreats into personal sexual fantasy today. Just completely uncalled for invitation into that.
Yep.
But I think more pressing than anything, we need to discuss that there's more, one, Chris Cooper, and two, flowers than we've anticipated on today's show.
That was a mistake that really doesn't affect anything because nobody gives a shit about the flowers, and Chris Cooper's awesome.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well for us. So we're going to spoil the movies even more than we are right now. And we're going to move into them pretty directly. So if you haven't learned how to use chapters, you should ask a friend. So let's talk about American Beauty first, which is a Sam Mendes film.
Of Skyfall fame.
Well, I think of that and what was it, Road to Perdition?
Road to Perdition, yeah.
But he also did Away We Go and Jarhead.
Right.
Mendes isn't the first one that comes to mind on American Beauty, though.
No.
I don't know if that's true. Is that true for you as well?
It's definitely true, but I don't think the person that comes to mind for me is the person who comes to mind for you.
Sure. Well, let's think behind the camera for a minute. Okay, so I'm talking about Alan Ball.
Right.
And I think the reason I think about Alan Ball is sometimes the writer comes through far more than the director.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot. So Alan Ball also did 6 Feet Under. I think he works on True Blood now. I don't actually know. But if you look at American Beauty and you look at 6 Feet Under, there are a fuck ton of similarities. There are points when I'm watching American Beauty that I can kind of close my eyes and, well, I guess you wouldn't close your eyes, but you know what I mean. If you forget you're watching American Beauty, you might be mistaken into thinking you're watching 6 Feet Under. And I like seeing that as we learn more and more about writers, to see the writers that their stuff feels just as similar as a director's work.
Right.
I think Aaron Sorkin's a really good example of that. I know we haven't done a lot of his stuff on the show yet.
Right.
But I'm watching West Wing right now, and between Newsroom and The West Wing and even pieces of The Social Network, you know, those being big TV shows have a lot of directors, and no matter what the director is, you feel like you're watching an Aaron Sorkin show. Also, Allison Janney, a really quick segue from The West Wing. She's the press secretary, CJ Craig on that. She plays the docile mom in American Beauty,
right? Which
is the only film role I think I've ever seen her in.
I've seen her in one or two other things, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Weird to go from, you know, press secretary, powerhouse on top of her game to basically in a coma.
Right.
Is pretty amazing.
Right.
So you're thinking of when you think American Beauty, you're probably thinking about some of these characters.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing about American Beauty is there are characters who carry the film. There are characters who are surprise wonders. There are characters who tortured people to death in P2 that I just like watching on the screen.
Oh my God, Wes Bentley, right?
Yeah.
Or Ricky Fitz, I love his name in this, whose strategy is just tape everything.
Right.
Which, you know, you can make fun of him for, but that's how we got Exit Through the Gift Shop.
Right.
He is basically the guy from the darker brooding teenager of the crazy guy from Exit Through the Gift Shop who just tapes everything he sees.
Yeah.
And man, P2, that was, God, I love that. Such a good place.
Yeah. For me, it's Mena Suvari. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
that's weird to hear from you. I thought I was alone in my Mena Suvari love.
A lot of people, if they think of Mena Suvari, it's because they think of the rose petals scene, which is probably the most iconic thing from American Beauty.
Yeah.
Even though the film wants you to think it's the bag.
Yeah, yeah, it really does.
And it's not even that scene that makes me think of her. It's that she is the character who, throughout the course of the film, you get to know every single character inside and out.
Right.
And the film starts before you get to know anybody, she kind of pops up and, you know, Kevin Spacey's character has a thing for her, and you kind of think you know where the film is going. And as the film moves along, these other characters become deeper and more entangled with each other. And then they bring her back, and she is the most flat, obnoxious character. And you're just sitting there going, why is... Okay,
you want to fuck him. You want to have like 10,000 of his babies.
Yeah. And you're just so over this character. And then within the last, maybe 10, 15 minutes of the film, she just gets as deep as every other character, but in a way that explains why she was so flat for so long.
Well, it's kind of it's a front she's putting up.
Right.
I love her, you know, that fear she has of being normal and she appears, you know, when you just kind of take a glance at all the characters in the film, the one that appears normal is also, I mean, you know, the head cheerleader and the character who doesn't want to, I mean, she just wants to leave things up to fate and not think too deeply about anything.
Well, and she's kind of this character that represents, I mean, you and I, we grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and she's kind of this character that represents the level above your social level.
The out of your league? Is that what you're talking
she's the
about?
out of your league. She's the unattainable, but she's also well off. She's got a car. She's popular. She's, you know, she seems like this character who's got it all together while you don't have anything figured out because you're 16 or because you're fired or because you just don't have the
She knows what she wants to do after school. That puts her ahead of, you know, she wants to be a model, even though all that is a decision, really.
Right, yeah.
The fact that she knows where she's going. I mean, when you're young, that's huge.
Yeah, and so she has this representative edge that gets she is the title character ostensibly for at least the first half of the film.
Sure.
She is the American Beauty. She is the one that goes, okay, this is an example of someone who's got it all figured out, and they're gonna go and be famous and be beautiful, and everyone's gonna love them, and they're gonna be on TMZ, and this is America. You know, this is, I'm hesitating to use the phrase the American dream because I'm going to use it later.
Sure.
But she is the one that's got it all together. Meanwhile, everybody else, in contrast, feels like they're now even more fucking put down and on the edge and unable to kind of keep everything under their coat. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
And the film kind of explores, it starts with her, but it kind of explores this thing with the American dream where, I mean, you know, we've talked about it on the show before where it's, what is it, 2.5 kids or 1.5 kids and married in 2 cars and you live in
minivan. You need a minivan.
Right. And you live in a house with a red door.
Yeah.
That is the textbook. It's like government issued American dream.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way to do it. That's end game. And then you die.
Right.
And what this film kind of explores with her as the catalyst of she has the perfect life.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else who's already a part of this American dream, you have Kevin Spacey and his wife and his daughter and, you know, their neighbors. Everybody is part of this central family unit, right? So you have suddenly this catalyst of the perfect American breaking down the American dream.
Yeah.
And you start to see how what is normally celebrated in film, you get a guy who decides, you know what, I'm taking control of my life and I'm buying the car that I want and I'm quitting my shitty job and I'm going to stick it to my wife who doesn't respect me.
Sure.
Meanwhile, his wife is, you know, she's kind of a bitch, but she's also finally getting to be happy. She's with somebody she loves. She's reigniting her passion. You know, these two characters, while they're losing sight of the American dream, are finally becoming what individuals they should have been for the last 30 years.
The character that Annette Bening plays is another one of those. I mean, the rose petal, all that stuff is really iconic. I do think of that first when I think American Beauty.
Yeah.
And it is a movie with a lot of great iconography.
Absolutely.
For some reason, though, that little montage has been always so memorable to me that I will sell this house today.
Yeah.
You know, it has this permanent place in my head. So many things seem to call back to it just because for whatever reason, I remember it so well. she's a really strange character, and you see her trying to sell that house and her moments of kind of being broken and not achieving and
Right.
desperation and sadness, and you feel for her, but at the same time she is Lester's antagonist.
Right.
I'm kind of curious how you feel about her role in the movie. I mean, are we meant to think that she's kind of a villain, or what do you make of that character?
I don't think that the film ever paints anybody out to be a villain. Look at the sympathy for the character who murders a man, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I think the film, if anybody's a villain, I think it's general human misunderstanding.
I love that scene too for being an icon. I always remember, it's so funny because Chris Cooper's character, who I'm going to call Frankie because he always uses his full title, and I think the most informal thing I could do to tear him down is call him Frankie.
Yeah.
So Frankie walks out of the rain, that big moment at the end,
Right.
the really dark moment, and comes into let's be honest, Lester seducing him.
Right.
I mean, we're supposed to believe that it's only seduction if you look at it out of context, and
Sure.
it's all just a big misunderstanding. But here is half-naked Kevin Spacey standing in the garage, putting out his arm and gently stroking. Come here, it's okay. And saying all these things.
Right.
What a big misunderstanding. But he's totally seducing him.
Yeah.
And then he pretends he doesn't know why Frankie kisses him.
Right.
Come on, Lester.
The
Come on.
fact that he's soaking wet really just...
Well, it's where the movie starts to get pretty dark. I
Yeah.
mean, when you hit that night, everything before then, I think about one of the first night scenes in the movie being the ignition, meeting Mina Savari's character and that being the inspiration for Lester.
Yeah.
And, smoking pot and talking about Reanimator, which is great.
Yeah.
One of the most memorable scenes from that movie, too.
Sure.
In that show, by the way, we said we don't talk about this enough, but let's use this as an opportunity to remind people that Reanimator is awesome.
It's amazing. It's a great, great film.
Go watch Reanimator again and listen to our stupid episode. But, that's an evening there. And from that moment on, it feels to me like it's always daytime and we're always driving in cars, singing and eating cheeseburgers, and everybody's just, their lives are taking off. And then we kind of come back around to another night scene. We come back around to, the fateful evening of
Sure.
leaving the house forever and all these broken feelings.
Yeah, and it's what happens after dark.
Yeah.
And that's another thing about the leaving home and the two children of these, itomistic families.
Sure.
Is the kids to me represent a very interesting element to the film, because I mean, honestly, how many times have we seen movies where people decide, I'm taking control of my life and I'm going to do things differently and I'm going to say yes all the time instead of no,
Right.
or I can't lie anymore.
I feel like you've been on a marathon you're not telling the double feature audience about.
Or I found this really cool mask in a river. But instead of this film celebrating these adults who have wasted a good percentage of their life, it shows them taking control, and it almost celebrates Lester's newfound life that he's taken.
Yeah, right.
But what the film shows on the flip side is basically the film has its hands on his hips for the parents, and it just goes, listen, it's too fucking late. You have a kid now.
You think so?
Well, think of the parents are fighting, and the only thing they're arguing about is each other and how much they hate each other and how Lester wants his own life and Carolyn needs her own space and she needs to be her own person and he needs to be her own person. And Jane leaves the room screaming.
Yeah,
because
right.
her parents are tearing each other apart because they don't love each other and they've created a unit that they don't want to be in.
Right.
But unfortunately, Jane is a living, breathing piece of furniture in that unit.
Sure.
You know what I mean? She's,
Yeah.
because of the quintessential American dream, they had a daughter, they had a child.
Yeah.
It's the same with Ricky. Is the family lied to itself by saying it was a safe, comfortable unit, and in that moment they created another life, and now they're walking on eggshells because he's fucking gay. Not Ricky, but Frankie is fucking gay.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
it's a thing that, again, it's not trying to demonize the parents for making these decisions, but it's kind of showing that, listen, the American dream is a dangerous. I mean, it almost paints the sunny white picket fence American dream. That's a dangerous place to land if you're not sure you want to be there.
Don't you think for a movie that is very much about those things, if we're going to talk about it as kind of a midlife crisis film about losing ambition and so forth, I feel like it has at least a very positive, there's something that seems very motivational, very inspirational about, hey, Lester's going to take his life back.
Sure.
Once he makes that decision, not until he dies does it seem like his plan would be thwarted for anything.
Well, and I think you're right. I think that the film, and this is one of the reasons I love it, is I think that what it's doing is it celebrates the individual ad nauseum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, each individual character is so celebrated and so allowed to be exactly who they are. And the film, lets them feel great and lets the audience think, wow, this is so empowering. This is such a wonderful thing for a human being to do. But at the same time, the film goes, you're not alone.
Yeah.
You can't change everything around you and expect everyone around you to act the same way.
Sure.
You can't be a different person and still, I mean, it's the first thing that Jane ever says to Lester. What, you're having a bad day, so now I'm supposed to be your fucking daughter or whatever? You think we can be friends just because you had a bad
Pals.
day? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole film kind of extrapolates the idea is you change something about you, something occurs to you, you can't expect the world to reciprocate.
Yeah.
But it's great that it's happening to you. I mean, because that's, the individual is the individual. I feel like the film celebrates, especially through Lester. I mean, that's really where it's showing that. And the two characters who have been shit on the whole time, Ricky and Jane, their families are torn apart. Their fucking fathers are making out and shooting each other. They're, all this stuff is going on. And unfortunately, what the film leads you to believe, but I mean, again, not in a negative way, is that they're going to run off and have a kid.
Sure. So you were talking about the movie speaking down on the family unit and sort of, I don't want to say speaking against that dream, but showing that maybe it's not always what we imagine it to be. You think it's doing that in one hand, but in the other, holding up the individual?
Yeah, I think even less speaking down about the family unit and more, it's more of a warning that complacency can be just as dangerous.
I don't know if you would say the families fell apart because of complacency, though.
Well, I think that the families were built because of complacency.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that part of the message is that, okay, you build this family unit, but that's the same life choice as, it's a fucking tattoo. Like,
yeah.
it's not a job. It's not, I'm going to be a model. Wait, I'm not going to be a model.
Right.
It's
something that's going to stick with you.
Yeah.
It's very hard to undo.
Exactly.
But again, I feel like it's kind of a positive spin. It's going to stick with you for a bunch of years.
Yeah.
But eventually your kids are going to break away from that family unit and, you might get some of your life back in that.
Yeah. No.
And it wasn't even the breaking away of the kids that caused that. They kind of left because of Lester's realization and, everything came to a head because everybody started to become more individualistic.
Exactly. And
go, fuck this. I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to get myself back.
Right. Which is why it's so perfect when the film almost culminates with Lester getting what was initially unattainable.
Yeah, sure.
He has become the person who can attain what initially was, he was the untouchables.
Sure.
And now he has reinvented himself and he's in a position where he can finally have sex with a teenage girl.
Sure. Well, that's a strange moment too, because the movie could go a lot of directions with its message there. It could say, that he's never going to have this, or it could say that he's not going to have sex with this girl because it's his daughter's friend and he realizes family's important. If he could make 20 possible decisions about this, 19 of them would end in he realized he needed to make a personal sacrifice for his family. And, it isn't that at all. The film continues to go with that individualistic message I mean, that's why his kids leave.
Yeah.
Or Jane and Ricky, I mean, they leave because they decide, all right, if this family's going to fall apart due to individualism, then why don't we use our own individualism and fuck this, we'll do this on our own.
Right.
We'll pay they kind of make a weird Cemetery Junction moment where it's just, oh, we can make it on our own. We're going to leave here and do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about what else is going on in that Angela moment. So, Kevin Spacey's character, Lester, goes to sleep with her, and he thinks she's really interesting, and her biggest fear in her life is that she's normal. And so it's, both characters are definitely getting something out of this. The only reason that seems to prevent him, or I guess the moment when he decides not to have sex with her, is upon the realization that she's a virgin.
Right.
I don't know what to think of this scene. There is so much happening here. We have, an older man sleeping with an underage girl.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that his sexualization of her, that he's made a fetish of her, is never really treated like it's that creepy. Only that American Beauty knows that it's a creepy thing, but it's trying to say, but look at all the good that it's done for him, and look at how it's lifted him out of his rut and allowed him to be inspired. But he makes the decision not to do it in the end. What do you think made him decide that?
Decide not to have sex with her?
Yeah.
I think to go back to...
Because, I mean, you'd agree it happens at the moment that she states she's a virgin, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that snap him out of something? Is that a deal breaker for him? I mean, what's going on in his head at that moment?
I don't think it's as much to do with her as it is to do with his sudden realization that this person that he thought he was going to have sex with doesn't exist. This perfect, experienced 16-year-old girl who is beautiful and totally wants to have sex with him she's not real.
So he sees beyond the disguise.
Yeah, he finally realizes that I think it's such a powerful moment for him because he realizes that his undoing of his entire current life that he basically sparked by seeing this girl was all, again, based on his own thoughts and based on himself, and that what he thought he was going to achieve never even existed in the first place. There was no batteries.
Yeah.
Lester did it all himself, and this girl never really existed in the first place.
Sure. It's also an interesting moment, though, given that the film it's not a statement on him liking this underage girl.
No,
you know what I mean?
all.
It's not him going, oh, well, wait a second. She's a bastion of innocence and she doesn't even know what she's doing, and this wouldn't be right. For a movie that at the end could be conceived as, this guy is being creepy and preying on an underage girl and decides to do what's right in the end. I think that's how most people will probably summarize American Beauty. Well, he does what's right in the end. He decides not to sleep with the underage girl. He doesn't do it for that reason. He would have continued to do it if she was what he thought she was.
Yeah.
I'm really excited because we've almost ended our conversation without discussing something. I feel like we're teetering on the brink right now.
One thing that we rarely touch on with something about rampant accessibility is how much the understanding of a film creates the legacy of the film. You take something like American Beauty and you take two different scenes. You take the flower petals on the ceiling, right? The one scene that everybody knows from fucking American Beauty.
Yeah.
And then you take the I don't remember what Ricky calls it, but the bag on the
Damn it. We were so close.
I'm sorry.
I really thought, double feature deconstructing the floating bag scene was our moment to move on. All right. Yeah, no, I'll take the bait.
So you have this bag and it's floating around and it's very self-indulgent, and it's kind of, a clear artistic turn that the film takes that, there are people who are going to stand there and put their finger to their lips and go, But because of the wide accessibility of American Beauty, and because everybody fucking saw it, and because it got nominated for every Oscar under the fucking sun, that scene falls by the wayside, and the writer and the director basically have to go, yeah, the flowers. You know what I mean? I mean, the film is built the creation of the film is to say this bag is symbolic of something.
Yeah.
The entire viewing audience of American Beauty says flower petals on the ceiling is the most important thing, and that is now the reality.
We've saved the creators from the bag scene. They went, this is really important, and we all went, that's got to be a joke or something. Hey,
Yeah.
look at all those pretty flowers.
Right. And immediately, it doesn't matter what the initial intention was, because the mass has spoken, and the important
Right.
scene is the fucking flowers. And yeah, shut up, you stupid bag. This movie is about flowers.
Note to self, this movie is about flowers. Note to self, let's talk about adaptation. Note to self is on the... You know, I thought we talked about note to self dying, and then here we have it again. Guy talking into a tape recorder. God damn it. I just can't win. Let's talk about Donald first. Can we just get that out of the way? I think people who listen to Double Feature want to talk about the guy who writes the crappy serial killer movie first.
Yeah, Donald Kaufman is played by Randy Cage, who's Nick Cage's twin brother.
How much of the Donald Kaufman actual story do we want to talk about?
The actual story, or the story
You know
within
what I
the
mean.
film?
Yeah, about the biography of Donald Kaufman, IRL.
Oh, I think that's one of the most brilliant things ever concocted in cinema.
Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Donald Kaufman remains the only truly fictitious person ever nominated for an Academy Award. Charlie Kaufman, who is an actual screenwriter who actually did write Being John Malkovich.
And recently directed. I don't know, did you see Synecdoche, New York?
Oh, I didn't know he directed that. I knew he wrote it.
He wrote and directed it.
Fantastic. No, I
And
haven't
we
seen
talked
it.
about him, on Eternal Sunshine and
Yeah.
Being John Malkovich, which I love that we get to hang out on the set of that again for this. I'm curious if they reshot a lot of that, or
if it just happened to be there.
they just use, behind the scenes stuff from... Well, there's one of three ways you do this, right? You take some behind the scenes footage you have and you insert some scenes of Nicolas Cage in it. Or you have the foresight to go, my next film is going to be about me with Nicolas Cage. Let's go ahead and just have him hang out behind the scenes of this movie. Or you recreate the behind the scenes of Being John Malkovich with Nicolas Cage around, because clearly the actors want to just revisit those sets and hang out.
I'm going to go with number one, but I honestly don't have an answer.
Yeah, someone will know. That's why I'm stating all three are possible, because I've looked up exactly 0 answers to that. Someone send us an email, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com.
So Donald Kaufman is a character in the film who writes terrible screenplays because his brother writes wonderful screenplays, and he's successful in his naivety, in the fact that he's oblivious.
He's making a serial killer multiple personality movie.
Right?
I love his excuse, too, when he's asked, Charlie asked him about, well, how is that going to work in the reality of the film? And he goes, trick photography. Oh, my God. Which solves a long-standing double feature riddle about a film I won't spoil.
Called Adaptation.
No, but one of our Splat Pack guys, where we complain over and over about how the fuck does that work in the reality of the film. And I'm sure if we asked him, he would say something like, what are you talking about? Trick photography.
Didn't you see it?
I love when we can finally find answers to mysteries no one else cares about. The amazing things that come from Donald, they seem to just get worse and worse.
I know.
The mirror is symbolic of personality,
The broken
fragmentation.
mirror.
I love, no, I'm sorry, the best one. Battle between machine and horses.
Machine and horse.
is far away the best thing that he says in the whole
It sounds
fucking
like
movie.
our previous conversation about American Beauty is what most of his talking sounds like.
It reminded me of Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I notice things in movies and I go, oh yeah, like the apes, and they're riding horses, and this is like modern society, and I stop myself and I go, don't say that on the show.
There's a film called 3, starring Bill Moseley. I'm sure if you found it, you would understand the similarities pretty quickly.
He's writing, you know what he's doing is writing those apartment movies.
Yeah.
Room 24 and Apartment 706 and Haunted Hotel Room XYZ. Yeah,
Right.
that's what he's writing.
Meanwhile, Charlie Kaufman is writing nothing, which is just a wonderful moment to see somebody who's absolutely talentless succeeding because they're oblivious. It's
Yeah.
this thing that James Gunn James Gunn, director of Super and Slither and Lolly Love and
Dawn of the Dead remake.
right, and Guardians of the Galaxy. He once said that there's no such thing as writer's block. Writer's block is you judging yourself, so just fucking shut up and write.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's times where I've worked on terrible projects that I said, okay, let's do this bad project so I won't have any standards. I can actually get something done.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Charlie Kaufman versus Donald Kaufman shows is Donald Kaufman is Charlie Kaufman just going, whatever, I'm going to just write something.
Right? Amazing. Perhaps the Kaufman that Charlie Kaufman feels he could never be.
Right, unfortunately. So Adaptation is about what? It's about writing a movie?
I thought it was about how the book is always better than the movie. Can we just hold on? Can we just pause and use the film Adaptation as the standard example for sometimes the book is not better than the movie.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's impossible to turn the book into a movie.
Right.
And usually you don't know things are based on books if the book is terrible.
Right.
Adaptation. But yeah, man, John LaRoche is, I mean, they call him, this great character.
Yeah.
They don't have to point it out. But when the first time I saw Adaptation, I didn't make the connection between the amazing guy with no teeth and the guy at, lunch meetings that they kept saying, Tilda Swinton's character, who plays, by the way, a completely feminine woman for probably the first time on Double Feature.
Yeah. Well, she was kind of on Double Feature, yeah. But she's kind of feminine in that new David Bowie video.
Tilda Swinton has some range, man, but not on Double Feature. She doesn't. On Double Feature, it's always, whoops, Tilda Swinton's in this and is basically playing a dude again. And Meryl Streep, I don't think has ever come up on Double Feature. So
Meryl
this is just
Streep
a
has
great
never
day
come
for...
up in my film exploration.
Well, here she is, getting high and looking at her toes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great moment for women on Double Feature, I guess. But let's ignore them and talk about Chris Cooper instead. It's, I guess, what I was getting at. No, I don't make the connection between Tilda Swinton's character going, yeah, isn't he a great character? What a great character. And I'm like, that's nice. Lunch conversation. Go back to that guy with no teeth. He's a great character.
Right.
But man, this is the movie that got me on board with Chris Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
What is it that makes this character so fucking great? First of all, would you agree with the premise that this is the greatest fucking character ever?
Absolutely.
Like, but what is it about him?
He's charismatic and enigmatic at the same time. He's smart,
sure.
which is really nice, but he's also kind of your standard Southern dope.
Yeah.
So you get to enjoy in an exploitative fashion how dumb the South can be. Meanwhile, this guy's smarter than you, so you don't feel like a bad person. And also he can
Right.
still surprise you because his character stops being predictable.
Well, that's the interesting thing when you start with this character, because he has the enigma of, it seems like he's a simpleton, so much so that it has to be an act.
Right.
And you probably never get that more than the very first scene where he's talking to the cop.
Yeah.
And, reciting all of this, which at the time, I mean, I guess I was thinking, oh, this is just rote knowledge that he learned how to give this spiel verbatim because he's a two-bit crook. And then the more you find out about him, the more you're going, this has to be an act, until you realize, no, this is who he really is.
Right.
He's not just regurgitating information. This guy proves himself over and over. But the most amazing thing is, even once you realize that, you've settled down and you go, okay, I get this character. He really just has the aesthetic of simpleton over what is a brilliant mind. He's still incredible to watch because that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Seeing that somewhere else, it's just such an unheard of character.
So this film purports to be about fucking orchids, right?
Yeah, sure.
And it's interesting, the treatment of the film about flowers, because we have one character, John LaRoche, who is absolutely in love with orchids and this ghost orchid and whatever. And then we have all his workers who are Native Americans who are supposedly, now this isn't actually the case, but supposedly they're only in it because that orchid is a drug.
Mm-hmm.
So they're interested in the flower aspect for that reason. Meanwhile, we have Susan's character who's really into the orchid because it represents this untouchable passion that she can't find in her life.
Right.
And then we have Charlie Kaufman, who's not interested in flowers at all, but he's got to make a movie about flowers.
God, and I love that he keeps going, I want to make a movie about how great flowers are. And people will go, are flowers great? And
Right.
But he sits there like, well, I don't know. Which is the question I keep asking myself every time he goes, flowers are great. They're such a magnificent, just seems like one of those things people say. And
Right.
I'm the guy who has no respect for fucking flowers. Not
Yeah.
interested.
Exactly. So instead he sits there and can't write a fucking movie.
Well, he's trying to have somebody else's passion.
Right.
You know, he's trying to share someone's hey, this person thinks flowers are really great. And so he's chasing after that, trying to get invested in that.
Sure.
Meanwhile, the thing that she likes about flowers is that it's someone else's passion.
Right.
So he's 3 people now removed from the actual core of inspiration.
When your big epiphany to the screenplay that you're writing is that you have to write what you know, and you don't know flowers, and you don't know
Right.
Susan Orlean, and you don't know John LaRoche.
Right.
But what you do know is that you can't write a fucking movie about these people.
And you think you're fat and bald. So
Right.
let's write a movie about that.
If the film wasn't already meta enough, it gets to a point where the film starts writing itself from the beginning, although you've been watching it for an hour.
Sure, yeah.
So he starts recanting the first parts of that voiceover, which Brian Cox has told us voiceover is absolute bullshit. And Double Feature is never one to disagree on that
Right.
assumption.
Although we should point out Brian Cox actor, not Brian Cox science consultant on Sunshine.
Right, exactly.
Two very different. I wish we had an excuse to talk about Brian Cox brilliant scientists more frequently, but I just can't find one.
No. So we have this amazing moment where Charlie Kaufman decides, I've got this. I know how I'm going to write this film. But he's so deep in Donald Kaufman getting ahead of him
Yeah.
that he's now cutting himself off.
Right.
He's writing, and he's going, wait, I can't do that. You know, write what you know is one of the 10 commandments. And wait, voiceover,
Yeah.
I can't do. You know what? Fuck it, I'm
Right.
doing voiceover. And
Right.
so he's second guessing himself, but he's at least finally on the trail. Amidst all this, The Three takes off, and it becomes this, you know, legendary, pre-legendary Hollywood blockbuster.
Yeah.
And the moment of maybe you should bring Donald in to help you with this film. That's kind of this interesting moment where you're not sure where Charlie Kaufman really is in the character Charlie Kaufman now.
Yeah.
The real Charlie Kaufman probably checked out of the character a little while ago.
You mean
because-
writer of Adaptation,
Correct.
Charlie Kaufman?
Yeah, exactly. Because he is officially writing himself as a character who's now taking advice from his brother, who doesn't really exist in life.
Well, he's also no longer, I mean, this isn't, you think about the moment that Donald starts helping him with the script or that happens. And that's also the moment that Adaptation starts having people getting eaten by alligators.
Right. And there's intrigue and sex and conspiracy.
Well,
and...
you want to talk about intrigue? I mean, the twins where one pretends to be the other in
Yeah.
a hilarious, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the movie preps you on cliches and then starts exercising them, probably for jokes, but maybe as an exercise itself. I don't know.
Well, I think what ends up happening with the film, at least in the writing process, is that the film has gotten to a point before he, quote, brings Donald in to write,
Yeah.
where you are acquainted with every character. They're all strong and none of them are motivated.
Yeah.
It's this thing that he hears at the seminar, right? Your characters have to change, and the change has to come from within themselves. When you're writing a fucking film where you're the main character, the
Mhm.
change has to come from you twice. You know?
What do you mean?
Well, he's now having to write himself as a character whose change is coming from within himself, but he is himself. So he's got to figure out a believable change as the writer to write as a character.
Okay. Yeah. I see what
Do you
mean.
get what I'm saying?
Yeah, he has in his own life, he has to come up with this change that he has to basically
Change.
have the epiphany
Yeah.
and then write the epiphany down for his character to have.
He's put himself in a place where he has to change as a human in order to complete the character in the film.
Right.
So instead he goes, fuck that. I'm bringing in another writer. And he starts taking this film that is ostensibly going nowhere, and whether it's out of complete rage or because he can't figure out what he's really doing. I mean, there's a definitive point in the film when he goes to the seminar where events stop correlating with real life.
Mm-hmm.
That is the definitive moment where in the film, aside from Donald, the things in the book and things that really happened are no longer going on.
Right.
And so this is the moment where he brings in another writer, and Charlie Kaufman is either literally going, fuck it, I need to finish this movie, or he's trying to show some deep, look what Hollywood would have happen to a film.
Sure.
Or, what do you do about a story that can't end? There's a lot of deep meaning that could be coming from this. But
sure.
The reality of it is that you basically get thrown, cheating on your husband, use of drugs, secret flower that makes a wonderful, a wonderful opiate, alligator murder. We have
car chase, dueling narrators.
Yeah, I mean, you get
not just one, but dueling narrators.
You get
my favorite.
All these standard film faux pas, and
you get all the commandment breakers.
And so suddenly this film is doing something. I mean, it is finally going somewhere, right? We can all agree that every character has now been handed a conflict, and now
we're on a collision course to the end of the film.
Exactly. And my question, and this is an interesting point that I kind of realized watching this film, because I've seen it before, but this is the first time I've really watched it analytically. I don't really care about that part of the movie. Once Donald starts writing, I'm just kind of sitting going, yeah, this is
right.
But you kind of sit back and go, well, how much of what was going on before can actually constitute a film? It brings me back to that moment, because I know you and I kind of briefly touched on it before we started recording, but the whole film is going on, and all I want is more John LaRoche.
Yep.
And the film even says he's a great character, but there's not enough of him to fill a novel. There's not enough of him to fill a few pages. I mean, as a character, not within the book. And I start thinking, what's John LaRoche going to do? I mean, this becomes a court drama.
Sure.
He finds a new obsession, or he finds an even more unattainable orchid and dies in the process, right? Like, there is no film in John LaRoche without the fact that he is in the real world.
So you've come to respect the end car chase alligator.
Exactly. You realize
clusterfuck, because you do kind of need it.
Yeah, you realize that Susan Orlean's novel really can't be a movie unless you let Hollywood into the novel.
In looking at the two mediums as well, you can end a book pontificating, but it's a lot harder to do that in a movie. And Adaptation is a movie that does that. It ends in Nicolas Cage sitting in a car pontificating, which is, I think, kind of clever and really great to go, well, we're going to show you all the stuff we feel like you have to put in a movie to make it a movie at the end.
Right.
We're going to have this hyper self-aware climax, but also go, the book kind of ends pontificating, and we're going to attempt to see if we can get away with that by making a joke about it.
Sure.
Narrating at the end of the film. You know that the website is doublefeatureshow.com, and the email address is doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. So that is where the correspondence should happen, but I had an idea for some correspondence this episode of the show.
Photos of Donald Kaufman, IRL.
I want to do, this might not surprise you, but a year 6 of Double Feature.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be the year following the year we're currently embarked on.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like I'd really like to continue doing the show. That is a plan that I would like to carry out.
It's a good excuse to watch movies, man.
It is. I would see about 3 films a year if it weren't for Double Feature. So, we come on here and we ask for donations all the time, but I've actually, not to get ridiculously sentimental or anything on you, but I'm kind of inspired by your Kickstarter.
Yeah, that went so well.
There's a lot of Kickstarter stuff going on today, so I just I don't know. I wanted to get some ideas together with you, and we'll talk about this more in the future. But there's definitely going to be a Kickstarter for year 6. But I kind of want to know, we have a huge opportunity to do Kickstarter incentives, and I don't really know what people would want. So rather than come up with a bunch of ideas and make it a big secret till we announce it and whatever, I kind of want to design our Kickstarter with the audience a little bit.
Yeah.
And just go, all right, here's something I know you fuckers want. You want the ability to choose movies. So we're going to incorporate that somehow. We've kind of got some ideas, but there's going to be more assignment for year 6 double feature. People will be able to pick out movies in as an incentive somehow. Maybe topics as well. I don't know. I want to know what else besides shoutouts and Carney titles people want for doing a Kickstarter pledge. So doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. Just any ideas you have. We'll throw out the bad ones. So no bad ideas and brainstorming. Just send us your terrible ideas.
So I guess while we're still on year 5, we should do 2 more films.
Yeah, in the meantime, we're going to have to keep coming up with pairs.
Okay, so let's just pick 2 movies we haven't seen.
That's good. What do you got?
I really want to see Shame, and I really want to see I Saw the Devil.
It's funny that we mentioned the not seeing movies unless double feature happens.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I haven't seen either of those. And I know you were just saying that you're never going to see I Saw the Devil because it's long.
Yep.
So we'll make it homework, and then we'll both be forced to watch them and come up with a retconned reason for the pair.
Perfect. Watch more fucking film.
Bye.